there was an explosion, a bang which gave birth to time and space. Once there was an explosion, a bang which set a planet spinning in that space. Once there was an explosion, a bang which gave rise to life as we know it. And then came the next explosion.
Responsible for one-off cult favorites like Snatcher, Police Knots, and the Gone Too Soon PT, Hideo Kojima is largely synonymous with the Metal Gear series he launched in 1987, a franchise I really enjoyed. Where much of his life has been spent directing Solid Snake in his exploits against a colorful cast of villains on various platforms, I had always wondered what, if given the chance, Kojima could do besides iterate on a franchise that made him a household name. We got that chance after the unfortunate and ugly split from Konami, a business decision that pretty much assured we'd never see a proper new Metal Gear from the mind that gave it life. A free agent, Kojima was quickly picked up by Sony and given rein to make whatever game he wanted. From the initial reveal of the new Kojima Productions logo to the first teaser trailer for his Cryptic project, there's been an air of breathless anticipation to find out what Hideo Kojima has been up to. In the indeterminate future, America is broken, shattered, and left for dead. After a mysterious and cataclysmic event known as the Death Stranding broke through the barrier between the living and the dead, nothing was ever the same again. The United States of America became fractured in the face of total upheaval, forcing survivors to seek shelter inside large cities that have since grown isolated from each other. With the appearance of invisible creatures, explosive void-outs, terrorism, and rain that speeds the passage of time on whatever it touches, the newly branded United Cities of America limps along like an animal waiting to die. Bridges, an agency formed to help manage the country, attempts to stave off the bleeding by developing a network of way stations and distribution centers, strands, between the remaining major cities, knots, smaller settlements, and shelters in an attempt at unification against the threat that Death Stranding had borne. Bridges employs porters to help maintain the lifeline between knots by delivering precious resources and other essentials to the surviving clusters of humanity. Sam Porter Bridges, prominently portrayed by The Walking Dead's Norman Reedus, is one such courier who finds himself shouldered with the immense responsibility of bringing the country back from the brink. Like Kevin Costner in The Postman, Sam's job is to ensure the mail always goes through. As one of many porters in the UCA, he hikes across the country to deliver supplies and materials to those in need. This is tied to an open-world mission structure similar to Metal Gear Solid 5, where you could take on different missions anywhere on the map and approach objectives in a number of different ways. In Death Stranding, you'll be working to rebuild Bridges' dormant chiral network by transporting goods to people in exchange for linking them as network strands. Most people are more than happy to be connected to the UCA network, but you'll eventually meet the anti-government preppers who won't sign up unless you do a little extra work for them. No matter who puts in the orders, almost all deliveries become lonely and isolating ventures, similar in feel to the quiet and introspective journeys between bosses in Shadow of the Colossus. Save for the occasional licensed tune from Kojima's exquisite personal playlist, there's barely a soundtrack or even an in-universe radio to keep the crippling isolation away. Such unnerving peace as you hike across a broken country offers a moment or two to admire the bizarre atmospheric and residual environmental effects as a result of the catastrophe that broke the world. The famous Kojima granularity reveals itself almost immediately as a number of different gameplay systems and mechanics have been deployed to significantly impact Sam's travels. Most of your time in Death Stranding is spent learning the best and safest way to maneuver across the environment. The efficiency of Sam's movement is governed by the weight of the cargo he carries from orders and items picked up in the field. Even with an empty backpack, he doesn't move quickly or run particularly fast without technological assistance, so moving to and from target locations can feel arduous because of his speed, weight, and the differences in terrain. Strapping a bunch of containers to Sam's suit and piling them high on his backpack sounds like a good and funny idea, but nearing and exceeding his weight limit means he'll move slower and be more susceptible to losing his balance until the inevitable happens, falling over and damaging the goods. Momentum plays a factor in Sam's movements, turning what might be an easy jaunt downhill into an unstoppable, out-of-control jog. You generally want to avoid damaging your deliveries because their condition is one of many factors that govern a rating earned at the end of each order. Learning to read the environment, especially through your terrain scanner, is hugely important because it will help you find the safest, easiest route to your destination whenever possible. That means paying attention to where you're going. It's funny how my time with Death Stranding has actually taught me to rethink how I walk around in real life. There's a non-invasive emphasis on plotting safe routes with waypoints to ensure the safety of the cargo. Sure, you could just go wherever and whichever way you want. After all, the shortest distance between 2 points is a line, but you risk contending with terrain that is not only harder to move around, but also increasing the rate of degradation of your equipment and not knowing how to deal with sudden cliffs or sheer drops. Ladders and climbing gear are important for those situations, and while it may seem silly and rudimentary, using a ladder as a makeshift bridge can save you a lot of heartache. Difficult traversal activities, such as wading against a river's fast current, climbing, hiking through ankle-deep snow, or walking across rocky paths impacts the stamina meter that forces you to keep an eye on Sam's overall condition. Bad things can happen if his stamina fully depletes, such as getting caught up in a river current and getting washed away, your cargo left to float downstream as you struggle to reach the closest embankment. The game throws you a bone early on by letting you use a motorized bike that certainly helps to quickly close the distance, but you'll regularly find situations where the area is simply too difficult for the vehicle to cross, forcing you to abandon it and set out on foot once again. One way you can make things easier is to use the game's crafting system. Sam eventually earns a special tool that can be used to create certain structures designed to make life a little easier. The PCC is a fancy suitcase that can 3D print generators to recharge batteries, bridges to cross gaps in rivers, high-speed zip lines, and even private housing, which can be a real godsend out in the field. These units can be upgraded to offer additional cosmetic perks and make them more resilient against the environment. After leaving the first major area, you'll gain access to pavers that can fabricate entire stretches of road, complete with an energy track that constantly recharges vehicles passing over it. Pavers require a lot of materials to build, which you can find out in the open or obtain as raw materials after recycling your gear. You're going to be putting a lot of work in developing an infrastructure, but the time spent almost always pays dividends, making travel far more comfortable and less difficult. There is a way to speed up development of these larger projects, but we'll get into that later on in this review.
Bravo, Sam. That bridge should make life easier for a lot of people. You can be sure that every traveler and porter who passes that way will put it to good use. Keep an eye out for other spots that could do with another well-placed bridge.
Keeping Sam healthy and well taken care of is important because his fatigue and the condition of his equipment have an impact on his physical abilities and health if not kept in check. Spending too much time outdoors without the occasional rest in his private room, available at any distribution facility in the game, decreases his stamina, making it harder and harder to run, climb, and swim for extended periods. The private room is a comfortable bastion where you can examine and customize your equipment, listen to music, read emails from a grateful public, and examine the various trinkets that mark major events and characters from your journey. Even more useful is a shower and bathroom unit that not only freshens Sam up, but also refines his urine and feces into special grenades that can damage certain enemies and are enhanced as Sam consumes certain food and drink items. After reaching a specific point in the story, a fast travel system is unlocked that makes going back to previous locations a whole lot easier. It does come with a caveat, however, as any cargo stored on your person is transferred to that location's private locker before making the trip, which means you can't use the fast travel to game the system of delivering orders. The newly formed craggy environment of the United States is a unique type of adversary that takes a measure of planning and care to conquer. However, that isn't the only thing Sam has to worry about. Another specific environmental danger is timefall, a unique type of rain that damages everything it touches by rapidly advancing its age. Although Sam is protected from the rain, his cargo isn't and will sustain damage unless you seek shelter, natural or man-made, or make use of cargo repair sprays. Oftentimes, the timefall acts as a warning that the area ahead is occupied by BTs, ghost-like creatures that usually appear among the desolate ruins of the past. When caught up in a BT zone, your scanner goes nuts and points towards the direction of the nearest free-floating monster, giving you time to either sneak past it by holding your breath or dispose of them using those pee and poop grenades mentioned earlier. As your gear is constantly upgraded as you make connections, so too do the weapons you can use against the enemy. Flinging pea grenades may sound unconventional, but eventually you'll earn the right to 3D print different guns. I can tell you that anti-BT weapons are awesome, and really make these encounters easy to survive. However, you don't get them right off the bat, so you're stuck having to navigate these tense areas without much assistance. BTs will leave you alone if you hold your breath and stay far enough away, but if they touch you, it can trigger a fight with a vicious, tar-covered beast, leaving you to choose whether or not to fight or run away. Besides the BTs, there are also mules to contend with. These are former porters who have given up the life of helping people in favor of stealing from them. Mules rarely step out from beyond their camps, which means you're going to be bumping into them as you trudge across the country forming your informational strands. Unless you build watchtowers from PCC kits, which reveal nearby points of interest, your first encounter with a mule is likely to be a result of tripping one of their cargo scanners that periodically pings the area. Mule encounters feel the most Metal Gear because getting caught in a cargo scan will trigger the bandits to your last known location, giving you time to vacate the area before they see you. Sam is not Solid Snake, so he doesn't have a substantial amount of military training, psychological conditioning, and can't CQC a knife out of anyone's hands to save his life. Though he can fire a gun and punch when he needs to, running away or hiding in tall grass is an effective means to avoid detection. If you are caught, the bandits will give chase, both on foot and in a vehicle, to run you down and steal your stuff. The game does a really good job of escalating the mule's capability and arsenal to match your own, so while it may feel really good to fabricate guns as soon as you get them, know that these mules are also going to have these same weapons too. Aggressive as the mules can be, they pale against the machinations and pure malevolence of Higgs, Death Stranding's antagonist and leader of a terrorist organization calling themselves the Homodemons. Through cutscenes, dialogue, and flashbacks, you'll learn just how big of a threat this group is to America's already uncertain future. Higgs's goons function similarly to the mules, but are far more aggressive, shooting first and asking questions next month.
The name's Higgs, the particle of God that permeates all existence. Ah, so it was you that dragged him into all this. Bloodied but unbound.
Seeking shelter from timefall, evading BTs, and sneaking past mule camps all work in service to making your trips feel meaningful and compelling so that the sight of your destination is always a cause for relief. Distribution centers are set up to accept deliveries and reward Sam for his work. There are a lot of factors the game takes into account to give you a score based on the mission objectives, timeliness of the delivery, and its condition upon receipt. If you can arrive with all the packages and sustain minimal damage, you'll earn high marks that feed into your porter level, personal stats that increase Sam's ability to carry more weight and last a little bit longer out in the open. New and higher level gear becomes available as you bring more settlements into the fold, providing an ever-growing shopping list of equipment to play with. The structures you build from PCC kits can be upgraded with materials such as metals, ceramics, special alloys, and chemicals. Upgrading structures can strengthen and enhance their innate abilities, such as the repair spray that can fix damaged cargo while under a timefall shelter, and even choose music to play when you near its perimeter. Outfitting your structures with various personality window dressings like this is fun and doubles as a non-threatening way to greet and encourage other players. Instead of featuring direct multiplayer, Death Stranding goes the Dark Souls route by allowing those connected to the game to leave messages of support and warning to each other. Finally, though, a game has stepped up to do more than just let people post cheeky notes. Anytime you construct a bridge or set down a ladder to cross a chasm or deep water river, that object appears to other players connected to the game's server, allowing them to take advantage of your crafting. I tell you, there's no better sight than finding a bridge, zipline, or timefall shelter some player constructed on your way back from a fairly treacherous hike. I always stop and make sure to give as many likes, the game's indelible currency, as I can. The only catch, though, to these player-made structures is that they won't appear until you've connected the chiral network to the area, which is nice because it ensures that things won't be too easy for you the first time through. However, seeing bridges and life-saving private shelters appear after you've made the connection is always a cause for celebration. Players can even donate materials to build and upgrade your own structures or for larger projects, like the pavers that will build roads at the expense of a lot of resources. Though it doesn't come cheap, seeing the fruits of the community's labors can really be awesome. Another thing connected players can do is make deliveries on your behalf. Should you find yourself in a situation where an ambitious delivery proves too difficult or your supplies have run out, rather than quit the order entirely, construct a postbox and entrust the cargo to any player that happens to come along. Should you lose the cargo, in which it falls off your pack and you don't go back to grab it for whatever reason, that item disappears in your game and is transported to another's for them to find and deliver. In both of these situations, you and the player get partial credit of sorts for the delivery, and while that might not mean much at the end of the day, it's another cool avenue for other players to help each other out. Between picking up deliveries and helping each other make routes more accessible, I never stopped feeling a sense of pride, accomplishment, and community involvement with my fellow Death Stranding players, who all work together to make the world easier to move around in, one bridge at a time. Death Stranding doesn't shy away from any and everything that has come to define Hideo Kojima's unique sense of style over the years. You're still going to get that innate weirdness of wild, abstract concepts and characters with unique names. The director of Bridges, Die Hardman, wears a black onyx skull mask to hide his face. Scientist and Death Stranding researcher Hartman, portrayed by Kojima's favorite Danish film director, has his heart stopped every 21 minutes to facilitate a very personal mission. Deadman, the leader in Bridge Baby research, has an intelligent mind but needs to learn a thing or two about personal space. Although the roster isn't as large as previous Metal Gear games, the characters certainly make an impression with their behavior, ideals, and personality quirks. What does unite them is the manner with which they speak, offering a certain grandiosity and heavy-handed earnestness that comes from a script that takes itself seriously. Kojima doesn't quite out-Kojima himself here, but he certainly comes close when developing the game's world building and fiction. And as seriously as it takes itself, there are still moments of non-sequitur levity that makes for good comic relief for a story and world as bleak and oppressive as this one. There's also some good old-fashioned blatant product placement to enjoy, from the deliciousness of Monster Energy Drink to Norman Reedus' own AMC show, Ride with Norman Reedus. While I completely bought into Kojima's world, the one thing that nagged at me was the handling of the game's cryptic lore. At the start of the game, you're dropped into a pre-established world where nothing is outright explained to you in an upfront manner. Alien terms are frequently used like dooms, bridge babies, the beach, and even Death Stranding, delivered with a gravitas that suggests you should already know what they mean. And because the characters have been so entrenched in their own lore, no one ever stops to say, oh, and by dooms, I mean... There's a lot of hard science fiction going on, and a lot of it doesn't make sense the first, second, and possibly third time you hear it. Reading emails from Bridges staff and finding lost memory devices does eventually shed insight into these abstract topics, but you're still going to be scratching your head a little bit. I'll happily tag along with Kojima's fiction, but I feel like I'm tapping his shoulder every 5 seconds to say, hey, what does that mean again? The emails are nice and helpful, but I wish they were fully voiced for no other reason than to have something to listen to while making those long deliveries. As this console generation slowly makes its final lap before being sent to the farm upstate where other consoles roam free, there's been a lot of value placed on machines taking advantage of beefier graphics tech that plays well with newer 4K television screens. I don't own a PlayStation Pro nor a TV to run it on, and if you ever feel like you're missing out by not having the latest and greatest, Death Stranding is here to ease your FOMO. Up until now, I thought that Red Dead Redemption 2 was the pinnacle of the PlayStation 4's hardware, but it has now been matched thanks to the Decima engine, which powered the equally gorgeous Horizon Zero Dawn. I was left continually gobsmacked with just how gorgeous Kojima's vision of the United States looks on my non-4K TV. The richness of the high-resolution textures make environments look staggeringly realistic across all facets of the engine, including its lighting, special effects, and physics. The character models also look phenomenal, and while there's still a bit of the uncanny valley going on, the scanned faces don't look nearly as plasticky as I expected. Norman Reedus looks exactly as he does in real life, his face marked by a semi-permanent scowl, as does Guillermo del Toro, TV's Lindsay Wagner, and Kojima's team has perfectly recreated Mads Mikkelsen's striking visage, infusing the character of Clifford with a sense of unbalanced menace. I feel like I've been talking this game for like 3 hours, so let's cut to the big question. Is this game good? The answer is entirely subjective. I enjoyed Death Stranding specifically because it's a notable departure from the Metal Gear formula. I actually enjoyed the emphasis on exploring the map and finding creative ways to take on natural obstacles, while others might see it as tedious. It is also a much quieter game that doesn't fall back on huge explosions and a Broadway play's worth of crazy cartoon villains who shoot electrified bees out of their empty eye sockets as they fly around on nuclear-powered jetpacks. There's also a really nice variety when it comes to orders, some of which put interesting restrictions that really disrupt normal play. I also feel that people may struggle with how often the story's pacing grinds to a halt so that Sam can connect large swaths of the playable area to the chiral network. The mules and BTs cause enough of a disruption to help make things interesting and less mundane, but it's not like these enemies go out of their way to hunt you. They'll keep to themselves unless you venture deep into their territory. Speaking as someone who had absolutely no problem with the pacing, movement speed, and sheer explorability of Red Dead Redemption 2, Death Stranding was right up my alley. Death Stranding is a Kojima game through and through, and all of the idiosyncrasies, intricacies, and eccentricities that define his work through the years are well intact. For a large part of the game, the story is pretty straightforward as you navigate the country reconnecting the network strands. But the plot is hardly conventional, especially in the segues leading up to its final, mind-bending and head-scratching third act. There's going to be a lot written about the game once it gets in the hands of the community, and that's in large part to its vague, deeply abstract concepts and themes. Part of me thinks that this may end up being Kojima's most divisive game, that you'll either love it or hate it because it is such a stark departure from his popular works. What it isn't likely to do is change your already predefined notions and attitude towards the author. If Hideo Kojima's non-conventional storytelling, flair for the cinematic, and fourth wall breaking silliness gets you out of bed every morning, then Death Stranding is going to appease, surprise, and maybe even delight. Dark Station gives Death Stranding 4.5 stars.